All right, we're going to learn 2 more ways. Are you so excited? Okay. No. 2 more ways to solve a quadratic today. We're going to learn how to do some square roots. Okay, we'll start with that. And that's going to be somewhat easy. And we'll do complete the square. That's the one that's causing people to have this violent reaction or like this physical, like I'm going to throw up. Someone actually took a trash can and put it by their desk. They thought it was so gross. All right, complete the square. I'm not kidding. I think he was sick though. Maybe not from the math. All right, we got 2 parts today. Letter A and B. All right, so we are going to do some finding square roots, okay? That's what it's called, finding square roots. And this is going to be one of the easier ones to do. And you're like, cool, let's do that one all the time. Unfortunately, this one only works in special cases, okay? This one only works when you have a quadratic to solve that looks like something like this. ax squared plus c equals 0. What am I missing here? Yeah, I'm missing the b term. There's no x. It's just x squared. There's no x term. There's no linear letter here. There's no x variable. It's just x squared, okay? In order to do this, what we're going to do is we are going to solve for x squared. Okay, we're going to solve for x squared, and then we're going to remember to take the plus and minus square root. That's where people will get this one wrong. Okay? Like, for example, if I were to tell you x squared equals 16, so what is x going to be? A lot of people will know that 4 is an answer, but when you take the square root, you have to take the plus and minus square root of 16. There's 2 answers to that. Doesn't negative 4 work also? You can't just choose what answer you want to go with. Oh, I like positives better. I'm just going to choose 4. No, you have to choose. You have to pick both of them because they both work in that equation. Okay, now let's remember how to do this real quick. If you get something like the square root of 18, you're not allowed to leave it like that, right? Remember? You have to get all the perfect squares out of there. So what is the perfect square that goes into 18? 9 times 2. Perfect. And so this, when you rationalize it, that's what we call it, rationalizing or reducing, whatever you want to call it, is 3 rad 2. Okay? So you can't leave things as rad 18, rad 20, rad 8. All of those have perfect squares in them. So here we go. We're going to do 4 of these and then move on. Number 1. Okay, suppose we have 4x squared plus 10 equals 46. And I need to solve this. And I will tell you to solve this by finding square roots, okay, by finding roots. So what I would do is I would solve for x squared. I want to get x squared all by itself. So then I'll start by subtracting 10 to the other side. And I get 4x squared equals 36. What's my next step? Perfect. Divide by 4. X squared equals 9. Okay. Now here's the part where you're going to solve for x by taking the plus and minus square root of 9. And so I get that x equals plus or minus, oops, look how I wrote that. That's terrible. Plus or minus 3. Those are my 2 answers. And you can go back to the original and check them if you want to, or not. Okay, it's pretty easy, right? Pretty good? I think you did that in Algebra 2, or Algebra 1. All right, number 2. Maybe it's not going to be a perfect square, so let's look at this one. 7x squared minus 35 equals 0. All right, we're going to solve for x squared. We're missing an x term, so let's solve for x squared by adding 35 to the other side. Divide both sides by 7. Divide by 7, divide by 7. X squared equals 5. And then take the plus and minus square root of 5, which is just the plus and minus square root of 5. That would be your answer. Those would be your answers. There's 2 of them. You get positive rad 5 and negative rad 5. You don't need a decimal. I'd rather you leave them in radical form. All right, number 3. Ooh, here we go. 2x squared minus 20 equals 20. Okay, let's take that and solve for x squared. So let's add 20 to the other side. Plus 20 plus 20. So we get 2x squared equals 40. Divide both sides by 2. So x squared is 20. Okay, at this point, we want to solve for x now by taking the plus and minus square root of 20. Okay, don't leave your answer like that. Remember? This has a perfect square in it. 20 is 4 times 5. 4 is a perfect square. So my answer would be plus or minus, keep the plus or minus there. And then I'm going to take the square root of 4 and leave the square root of 5. Yes? Pretty good? Okay. So the first one was nice. It had a nice perfect square. The second one did not. The third one had a perfect square in there. Now let's look at one that has a fraction and how we fix that. This is the last one of these. All right, suppose you have 2x squared plus 8 equals 13. Okay? Start by subtracting 8. Subtract 8. So 2x squared equals 5. Divide by 2. Do not write that as a decimal. Okay, you can't have fractions or decimals inside of radicals. It's not allowed. So then we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 5 halves. Okay, and that's not allowed. We're not allowed to do that. So what we need to do is remember what we did on Monday. We need to break this up into rad 5 over rad 2. Do you remember this problem? This type of problem? Yeah? And then multiply top and bottom by what? Rad 2. Rad 2. Because we're not allowed to have radicals in our denominator. So to fix that problem, we multiply by that radical. And we end up with plus or minus rad 10 over 2. Yay. Is it extremely warm in here? Me too. Part B. Now we're going to do the entire completing the square. So if you've tuned me out so far and you were waiting for the good stuff, here it is. Completing the square. I picture a square that's not quite completed. No. All right. Here we go. Suppose that you have something like this. X plus 3 squared equals 49. Okay? Suppose I have that, and I want to solve that. Okay? Well, guess what? I have a perfect square on this side, and I have a perfect square on that side. And what I can do is I can take the square root to get rid of that squared there, and take the square root of that side. But make sure you put plus or minus. Okay? So what did I just do? I did the square root and the square root. The square and the square root cancel out, but when I take the square root of an equation, I have to put plus or minus in front of that. And so what I end up with is I end up with two answers. I end up with x plus 3 equals 7, or x plus 3 equals negative 7. So x would equal 4, or x would equal negative 10. Does it kind of remind you of when we did absolute value equations? Yeah, they're a lot like parabolas, absolute values. Absolute values are V-shaped like this. Parabolas are U-shaped. But if you're trying to find the intersection of you get two answers, just like you do with parabolas. They're a lot like each other. Okay, so that's going to be part of the complete the square thing. Let me teach you the other part, okay? Number 5. Let's say that there's like 3 parts to this thing. I'm kind of teaching them all separately, and then we put them all together. So let's say we have a perfect square trinomial like this. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 25. Okay. Now, everything on the left, that's a perfect square trinomial. It can be factored as a perfect square. Do you remember doing these? The shortcut? If you don't remember, you can always, what times what's 4 adds up to 4. It's 2 and 2. So you get x plus 2 squared equals 25. This right here, this entire x squared plus 4x plus 4 factors as x plus 2 squared. All right, now from here, we just go back to what I just taught you. Go ahead and take the plus and minus square root, both sides. So x plus 2 equals plus or minus, what's the square root of 25? It's 5. And then we get two answers here. X plus 2 is 5, or x plus 2 is negative 5. All right, subtract 2, subtract 2. And those are your two answers. If you're not getting two answers for these, you're probably doing something wrong. You're probably not taking the plus and minus square root. Okay, now you're probably wondering, well, oh, that's nice and easy and good. Everything's going to be a perfect square. No, it's not. Here's your job. You're going to have to make a perfect square trinomial. Make a perfect square trinomial. They're not all going to start out that way, but you're going to create one. Okay? So let's see if you can do it without me giving you the form. There's a formula, but let me see if you can do it. If I said to you, x squared plus 6x plus blank, and I wanted to fill in that blank so that this whole thing could be squared. Ooh, would you be able to figure that out on your own? Like, what number would go here so that if I factor this, I get this whole thing squared? Anyone know? Besides Bobby? Nope, just one number. Yes? It's 9. Were you thinking 9? It's 9. 9. Why 9? Because this would be x plus 3 times x plus 3. 3 and 3 make 6. 3 times 3 is 9. And try another one on your own before I give you the formula? No? How about x squared minus 10x plus blank? Perfect square trinomial. I want to factor this as a perfect square.
I just want God against.
Is it what?
5.
Oh, no, but you're on the right track, though. Yes, no. Yep, it's 25. You were on the right track with 5, though. You knew it was going to be 5 and 5, right? And so that would be 5 squared would be 25. Okay, so those of you who are like, I hate this game, this sucks. I understand. It's like you have to try and figure out, you don't even know what you're doing. Here's the formula for those of you who love this formula. You're going to take 1/2 the middle term, b, and square it. Okay? So now let's do this game. This right here is very key to completing the square. I even put 4 stars around it.
I was a little confused.
All right, now you won't be. So watch this one. X squared plus 12x plus blank. So now there's no more guessing. There's no more trying to figure it out and what's it going to be. There's a nice little formula. You take half the middle term. So what's half of 12? And then you square it. 36. Yeah. So this is x plus 6 squared.
Let me guess, it gets hard.
Yes, guessing is hard, like trying to figure out a formula in your mind. But once you're given half, it's just you take half the middle term and square that number. You're good. Let's do one more. X squared minus 18x plus blank. By the way, that number on the end is always positive. Okay? Half of negative 18 is negative 9. But as soon as I square negative 9, positive 81, and this would be x minus 9 squared.
Do these get harder?
No. I like to give you the middle term as an even number. If it's odd, they get gross. You have decimals. No one likes decimals. Okay, that part doesn't get hard. Now what we're going to do is the last part. And we're going to learn how to solve by completing the square. Okay, we've learned all the parts to it, though. We're just going to put them all together. Solve by completing the square. And I've got like 4 of them. And that's it for today. You'll have some time to do homework. Wowzers. All right, here we go. Or, yeah, take a nap. You can't use my blanket, though. That's gross. All right, I don't share. Okay, what number are we on? Like 7, 8? 6. Number 6. Here we go. Suppose you have x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 12. And you were told not to graph, not to factor, but you were told to solve this by completing the square. Let me go ahead and I'm going to run through all the steps with you, okay? First step, step number 1. Write it over here. Step number 1. What you're going to do is you're going to get rid of this constant 5. See, 5's not a perfect square. It's messing up your whole side that you're trying to get this whole left side into be a perfect square. 5's messing it up, so you're going to take 5 and you're going to banish it. You're going to subtract it over to the other side. So that you get x squared plus 6x equals 7? 7. Okay. I put a little blank there. You see that? You notice that? Yeah. Here comes step number 2. Step number 2 is the complete the square step. It's to take half of the middle term b and square it. So what is half of 6? 3. Squared is 9. Now, am I allowed to just add a number to an equation? I am, as long as I do it to the other side. Right? It's an equation. I'm saying this equals this. How about you guys have the same amount of apples? No, I'm just going to give you 9. Now you have the same amount. No, I got to give you 9 also. It's always apples, isn't it? Teachers always use apples. Why can't it be like I have 5 girlfriends and you have 5 girlfriends and you want 3 more? Now you have 8. You know, I got to keep it balanced. Too many girlfriends, you'd go broke. Okay, so that's step 2. Step 3, let's go ahead and simplify that. We're going to take this, so step 3 is going to be to factor. Do you like all these colors or are they bothering you?
I like them.
Yeah? Step 3 is to factor. So let's take this perfect square trinomial that we just created. We made a perfect square there. And we're going to put this in its factored form. So what is this thing factored? X plus 3 squared equals 16. Okay? Step 4. Now we're going to solve. We're going to solve by taking the plus and minus square root. Okay? So we get x plus 3, square and the square root cancel each other out, equals plus or minus the square root of 16, which is 4. So I get x plus 3 equals 4, or x plus 3 equals negative 4. And I end up with x equals 1, x equals negative 7. Okay? So we did all the steps separately, different times today, and then I just put them all together. Whew, I know, right? Heavy sigh. Definitely heavy sigh. Number 7. Let's try another one. X squared minus 10x minus 3 equals 1. Okay, we're going to solve this by completing the square. This will be your least favorite way to solve a quadratic. It will. It already is. You know that. But we have to do it. I know. You're like, why do we have to do it? Are you screaming that in your head right now? Yeah. Some people were vocal about it in my last class, but you guys are nice. Yeah, you're like, why? I know. Why not do the easy way, right? It's that dang California frameworks for mathematics of Algebra 2. Okay, so here we go. Start by adding 3 to the other side, because that 3 is not doing us any favors. So we get x squared minus 10x, leave a blank, equals 4. Okay, so first step, get that constant over to the other side. Now here comes the second step, is where you actually complete the square. You're going to take half of negative 10, and you're going to square that number. What is that number? 25. Take 25 and add it to both sides. That goes here and it goes there. Okay, that's key. A lot of people forget that step. You have to make sure that you're adding, and it's always adding. It's never subtracting. You're always adding that number to both sides. Now put this as a perfect square trinomial. By the way, this right here, I'm sorry, it is a perfect square trinomial. We're going to put it into a binomial squared. This right here is always half of b So it'd just be -5, always half of b. If you struggle on that, you can always do star method, 25, -10, what times what, -5 and -5. That will also get you there too. Equals 29. Ooh, you're actually going to like it better when it's not a perfect square. Because when you take the square root, you get x minus 5 on that side, and you get plus or minus rad 29. And there's nothing to do. There's no perfect squares in 29. 29 is not a perfect square. Finally, last step is to add 5 over. Usually we put it in front, so it looks like this. 5 plus or minus rad 29. You can write plus or minus rad 29 plus 5, but usually people put it in the front. And that's it. Those are your two answers. 5 plus rad 29 and 5 minus rad 29. Do you want to try one yet? Are you scared? Yeah? Sure. Okay, you try this one. X squared plus 8x plus 1 equals 5. All right, solve by completing the square. You try it. If you can't yet, that's okay. He eats chicken. Oh, that's a good idea. Yes. All right, subtract that 1 to the other side. There you go. Okay. And we leave a blank here, and even if you want to put a blank for yourself to know that's what you need to do, great, do it. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16, so I'm going to add 16 to there and make sure I add it to the other side also. All right, that creates a perfect square trinomial that factors as x plus 4 squared equals 20. Ooh, I gave you a little harder one to do, didn't I? Now, at this point, you're going to take the square root. So square root the squared. They cancel each other out. Equals plus or minus the square root of 20. Okay? Yes?
Plus 4. What did that come?
Oh, this right here, what times what is 16? Adds up to 8 would be 4 and 4, so it factors as x plus 4, x plus 4. Or you can just remember that it's always going to be half of b. Half that number every time. All right, subtract 4 over to the other side. I like to leave it in front. And then if you got that answer, that's pretty good, but you need to go one step further. Yes. This is 4 times 5. Okay? So you need to take the square root of 4, which is 2, and leave the square root of 5. Did anybody get that before I did? Wow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like a whole bunch. Okay.